I stood frozen outside the Grand Summit Hotel, clutching the invitation to my father's 60th birthday dinner, as my sister Amanda and mother Eleanor blocked the entrance. Their laughter cut through me like shards of glass. "You can't even afford the cheapest appetizer on the menu," Amanda sneered, eyeing my outfit with disgust. "Those shoes look like they came from a clearance rack." My mother leaned in her designer perfume, suffocating. "Patricia, please leave before you embarrass the family." If only they knew that 6 months ago my tech startup success had allowed me to secretly purchase this very hotel. As my security chief Thomas approached from behind them, I decided it was finally time to end years of emotional abuse. Family blindness had cost them dearly. The Lawrence family had one measuring stick for success: money. But not just any money. Old money. Respectable money. Money that came from following the traditional path laid out by generations before us. My father Robert was the only one who saw beyond that narrow view. While my mother spent her days in country clubs and my sister Amanda climbed the corporate ladder at the family investment firm, Dad would sneak into my bedroom when I was 10, bringing science magazines and computer parts. "Patty," he'd whisper, "your mind works differently. That's not wrong. That's your gift. That. Time. That. Patty," he'd whisper, "your mind works differently." Growing up in our Boston mansion felt like living in two different worlds. In my father's world, curiosity was celebrated. In my mother's, appearance was everything. Amanda thrived in mother's world. 3 years older than me, she was groomed from birth to be the perfect Lawrence heir. Perfect grades at perfect schools, perfect marriage to Jackson, the son of another wealthy family, perfect position as CFO at Lawrence Investments. I was the disappointing second child, too. Questioning, too independent, too much of a dreamer. "Your sister understands responsibility," my mother would say at family dinners. "She's not wasting her potential on fantasies." 5 years ago at 32, I made the decision that fractured our family beyond repair. I left my 6-figure consulting job to found a cybersecurity startup. My idea was revolutionary. A software that could adapt to new threats in real time, without human intervention. Dad secretly invested $50,000 as seed money. The rest of the family reacted as if I'd announced plans to join a cult. "You're throwing away your education," my mother declared during a particularly brutal Sunday dinner. "The Lawrence name means something in this city. If you fail," Amanda added, sipping her wine with practiced elegance, "don't expect us to bail you out." I didn't fail. But the road was harder than I imagined. For 3 years, I worked 20-hour days, sleeping on an office couch, pouring every penny back into research and development. During that time, the invitations to family events slowly stopped. When I couldn't contribute to the annual family vacation in Martha's Vineyard, my mother called me disappointingly practical for declining the invitation, as if I'd chosen poverty to spite her. "They'll come around when you succeed," Dad promised during our secret lunch meetings. His health had begun to decline, a heart condition he minimized, but couldn't hide from me. Then 18 months ago, everything changed. My software stopped a major attack on 3 national banks before their own security teams even detected the threat. Overnight, every major corporation wanted my technology. Offers poured in. I sold the company for $470 million, but retained leadership and substantial ownership. The company's current valuation, $1.2 billion. And I told absolutely no one in my family, except Dad. Instead, I made my most satisfying investment yet. Through a series of holding companies, I anonymously purchased the Grand Summit Hotel, the crown jewel of Boston hospitality, and my family's favorite venue for every important celebration. The place where Amanda had her debutante ball, where my parents hosted their 30th anniversary party, where the Lawrence name commanded immediate respect. As I stood outside those familiar doors, Amanda's cruel laughter suddenly stopped. I noticed something glinting at her throat, a small silver pendant with an abstract design. My breath caught. I'd designed that necklace in my college metalworking class. Amanda had claimed to throw it away during an argument years ago, calling it amateur trash. Yet here she was, wearing it hidden beneath her designer blouse, only visible when she leaned forward. That tiny revelation hit me harder than all her insults. My sister, who publicly rejected everything about me privately, kept the one thing I'd made with my own hands. The complexity of family ties suddenly felt overwhelming, and it was about to get even more complicated. "Excuse me, ladies." Thomas, my head of security, approached with professional detachment. At 6'4" with military posture, he commanded attention without trying. "You're blocking the entrance." My sister gave him a dismissive once-over, her eyes lingering on his perfectly tailored suit. "And you are." Thomas Wells, head of security. His voice remained neutral, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. He'd heard enough of my family stories to recognize the players. "Well, Thomas," Amanda drawled, "we're having a private conversation with our relative." She gestured vaguely in my direction, without actually looking at me. "Perhaps you could find someone else to hassle." My mother stepped forward, diamond earrings catching the evening light. "We're expected guests for the Lawrence celebration. My husband is a personal friend of the owner. I'm aware of the Lawrence party, Mrs. Eleanor Lawrence." Thomas nodded politely. "However, you're currently blocking the owner's entrance to her own property." Amanda laughed high and brittle. "The owner? Please. This is Marcus Whitfield's hotel. Has been for decades. Actually, ownership changed 6 months ago." Thomas's gaze shifted to me, his expression perfectly professional. "Good evening, Miss Lawrence. The staff is prepared for your father's celebration." The silence that followed was so complete. I could hear the fountain bubbling in the hotel's courtyard 20 feet away. My mother's face froze in that peculiar way it did when someone violated her social expectations, like the time our housekeeper's daughter came to our Christmas party because her babysitter canceled. The same tight smile, the same slightly widened eyes. "There must be some confusion," Eleanor finally said, her voice honeyed for Thomas's benefit. "Patricia doesn't own property in this caliber. She's in computers or websites or something." She waved her hand vaguely. "Some little startup that never quite started." Before Thomas could respond, Gregory Pearson, the hotel's general manager, burst through the revolving doors. At 57, Gregory had managed the Grand Summit for 20 years. I'd kept him on, giving him the autonomy and budget he'd been fighting for under the previous ownership. "Miss Lawrence." His genuine warmth was unmistakable. "We've been watching for you. Your father just called from the car. They're 5 minutes out." He glanced at my mother and sister with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Lawrence. Miss Amanda. Good evening. We have your usual table prepared in the main dining room, but Miss Lawrence requested a private space for tonight's celebration." My mother's hand found her pearl necklace, her telltale anxious gesture. "Gregory, there's been a misunderstanding. Patricia is my younger daughter. She's not associated with the hotel." Gregory's confusion appeared genuine. "But Miss Lawrence is—" "It's fine, Gregory." I finally spoke, keeping my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I was just explaining to my family that I've made some recent investments. The Wellington room is prepared for tonight." "Yes, ma'am. Exactly to your specifications." As we stood in this tableau of confusion, more family members began arriving. Uncle James and Aunt Martha. Cousins Drew and Taylor. My father's brother William and his third wife, Stephanie. All greeted with the awkward scene at the entrance, Eleanor and Amanda frozen in confusion. Gregory deferential to me and Thomas, standing guard like some corporate sentinel. Patty. My cousin Jenna pushed through the crowd, her characteristic enthusiasm breaking the tension. She'd been my closest ally throughout childhood. The only extended family member who kept in touch during my lean startup years. Or so I thought. "You look amazing. New haircut." I accepted her hug automatically, but something in her eyes didn't match her smile. A flicker of calculation that I recognized from board meetings when someone had information they thought gave them an advantage. "Thanks, Jenna. It's good to see you." I pulled back slightly. studying her face. "So what's this about you and the hotel?" she asked, too brightly, her eyes darting to Amanda. That's when I saw it. The almost imperceptible nod between them. The same signal I'd caught hundreds of times growing up when they shared a secret. Jenna, my confidant, who knew every detail of my company's progress. Jenna, who always seemed to visit right before my mother, made particularly cutting remarks about my career choices. "I was just about to explain," I said, keeping my voice steady, despite the fresh betrayal twisting in my chest. "Why don't we all head inside? Dad will be here soon, and this is his celebration after all." As we moved toward the entrance, I caught Jenna whispering to Amanda, "You said she was broke. What's going on?" Amanda's harsh whisper carried back. "She's bluffing. Has to be. Mom says she couldn't even afford a new dress for tonight." I stepped into the hotel that was now mine. The marble floors and crystal chandeliers, reflecting a success my family refused to see, even when it was literally surrounding them. The Wellington room sparkled with understated elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the hand-carved mahogany table, set for 20. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Boston Harbor, the city lights reflecting on the dark water like fallen stars. I'd personally selected every detail from the rare blue orchid centerpieces to the vintage Bordeaux my father preferred on special occasions. When Dad arrived, the years seemed to fall away from his face as he spotted me across the room. "Patty." He moved toward me with arms outstretched, ignoring the other family members vying for his attention. His embrace felt like home, the only true one I'd known in our family. "You made it. I wasn't sure you would." "Happy birthday, Dad," I whispered, noticing how much thinner he felt, how his once robust frame seemed diminished beneath his tailored suit. I wouldn't have missed it. My mother materialized beside us, her smile tight. "Robert, darling, everyone's waiting to greet you. Patricia, your place card is at the far end near Cousin Zachary and his new wife." Dad frowned. "Nonsense." Patty sits next to me. "It's my birthday, Eleanor." Before my mother could object, Gregory appeared. "If everyone could find their places, we're ready to begin service." To my mother's visible dismay, I was indeed seated at the head of the table beside my father. Amanda and her husband Jackson sat across from us, her expression vacillating between confusion and calculation as she observed the deference the staff showed me. "Quite a step up from your apartment above that laundromat in Somerville," Amanda remarked as the first course arrived. "Though I'm surprised you can afford the Grand Summit these days. Even their basic rooms are running $600 a night." Jackson smirked. "Must have put it all on credit. That startup world is all smoke and mirrors, until the bubble bursts." I simply smiled, savoring the delicate flavors of the chef's special amuse-bouche. "The truffle emulsion is exceptional tonight. Chef Daniels outdid himself. You know the chef by name?" My mother's eyebrows arched perfectly. "I make it a point to know all my key employees," I replied casually, taking a sip of water. The conversation stalled momentarily as servers presented the second course. I caught my father watching me with a mixture of pride and amusement, his blue eyes so like mine, twinkling with a shared secret. "Before we continue," Dad announced, suddenly tapping his glass with a spoon, "I want to say something." He stood slightly unsteady, and I resisted the urge to support his elbow. Looking around this table, I see the faces of those who share my name and my history. Some of you I've known all my life. Others joined our family later. But family isn't just about shared DNA or legal documents. His gaze settled on me. My biggest regret in life isn't a business decision or a missed opportunity. It's that I didn't stand up sooner for what matters most. His voice wavered slightly. 5 years ago, when my younger daughter decided to follow her passion rather than our traditions, this family made a terrible mistake. Most of us turned our backs when she needed support. "Robert," my mother interrupted, "this isn't the time for." "It's exactly the time, Eleanor." His voice gained strength. For 60 years I've swallowed my words to keep peace. No more. He raised his glass toward me. To Patty, whose courage to forge her own path deserves our respect, not our judgment. Uncomfortable silence blanketed the table. Then Amanda laughed, the sound like breaking glass. That's touching, Dad, really. But let's be honest. Patty's courage nearly bankrupted her. Last I heard, she was selling off furniture to make rent. Now suddenly she's pretending to own the Grand Summit, getting special treatment from staff who probably just feel sorry for her. Amanda, Dad warned. But I placed my hand on his arm. It's all right, Dad. I reached into my clutch and withdrew a slim leather portfolio. I've been meaning to share some news with the family. Slowly, deliberately, I opened the portfolio and removed several documents, sliding them across to my mother first. What's this? She asked, not bothering to look down. Ownership papers for the Grand Summit Hotel, I replied quietly, along with the deed transfer records and current financial statements. My mother's manicured fingers finally lifted the top page. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she scanned the information. This must be some kind of joke. No joke. I withdrew another document. This is the current valuation of my company, Secure Adapt Technologies. We sold the primary software 18 months ago for $470 million. I maintained leadership and 30% ownership. Our current market cap is $1.2 billion. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Cousin Drew demanded to know why he hadn't been offered investment opportunities. Aunt Martha suddenly recalled how she'd always supported my technological interests. Uncle James began recounting a completely fictional story about introducing me to my first computer. Through it all, my father sat quietly smiling, not at all surprised by the revelation. You knew, I said to him as the chaos swirled around us. He nodded. For months, Gregory called me when you first toured the property, thinking I was involved in the purchase. His eyes crinkled at the corners. I've been so proud watching you succeed on your own terms, but I wanted them to recognize their mistake, without the influence of your money. And now, I asked. Now it's time they face what they've done, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Family shouldn't be conditional on success. As I looked around the table at my mother's shocked face, Amanda's calculating eyes, the suddenly attentive relatives who hadn't returned my calls for years, I realized the true poverty had never been mine. The dinner proceeded with a strange, brittle tension. Every family member seemed to be recalculating their position in light of my revelation. I watched them through new eyes, seeing the patterns that had shaped our family for generations. Remember when Patty won that national science competition in 8th grade? Uncle William suddenly asked, breaking an awkward silence. Built that water filtration system that got her featured in that magazine? My mother's smile tightened. Patricia always had unusual interests. Unusual. Uncle William laughed. Eleanor, she was in Time magazine. They called her a prodigy. I remember you were furious about that article, Mom, I said quietly. You told me it was inappropriate to draw attention to myself that way. I was protecting you from disappointment. My mother insisted, cutting her salmon with precise movements. Child prodigies rarely fulfill their potential. I didn't want you developing unrealistic expectations or outshining Amanda. My father's question hung in the air. Amanda's husband Jackson cleared his throat. Speaking of achievements, Amanda just closed the Westridge acquisition. Biggest deal in Lawrence Investments history. His voice carried forced enthusiasm, his eyes darting nervously around the table. That's wonderful, honey, my mother beamed at Amanda. Always making us proud. The familiar dynamic reasserted itself. Amanda, the golden child, me, the afterthought. Even with evidence of my success literally surrounding us, the pattern held. The Westridge deal. My father frowned. I thought the board voted against that acquisition. Too much leveraged debt. Amanda's cheeks flushed. We restructured the approach. Something in her voice caught my attention. After years of negotiating with tech giants and venture capitalists, I'd developed a sensitivity to the subtle signs of deception. Amanda's left hand tapped the table twice, her childhood tell when hiding something. Congratulations, I offered, watching her carefully. Westridge has some interesting patents in their portfolio. Since when do you follow Lawrence Investments' business moves? Amanda snapped. I follow the market, especially companies with exposure to cybersecurity concerns. Jackson's fork clattered against his plate. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing specific, I said calmly. Though if you're integrating Westridge's legacy systems, you might want to upgrade their firewall protocols. They were running vulnerability tests using outdated parameters when we evaluated them as potential clients last year. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but I noticed Jackson excuse himself shortly after, phone clutched tightly in his hand. My security background made me instinctively suspicious of nervous behavior. I quietly texted Thomas to have someone monitor the hotel's networks for unauthorized access attempts. As dessert was served, my father's favorite chocolate souffle, Aunt Martha, began reminiscing about family holidays. Remember those Christmas talent shows Eleanor used to organize? She asked, her voice nostalgic. Amanda always sang so beautifully, and Patricia always had some science demonstration that went wrong. My mother added with a light laugh. Remember the Christmas she set fire to the curtains? It didn't go wrong, I corrected. The chemical reaction produced exactly the colored flames I intended. Dad moved his chair back and knocked over the beaker. Your demonstrations always took twice as long as anyone else's performance, Amanda said, rolling her eyes. So boring. Actually, my father interjected. I found them fascinating. Still do. You always encouraged her oddities, Robert, my mother sighed. That's why she struggled to fit in. The pieces suddenly connected in my mind. Is that what this has always been about? You wanted me to fit in, to be just like Amanda. I wanted you to be successful, my mother insisted. By whose definition, I pressed. By the standards of the world we live in, she replied, voice rising slightly. The real world, Patricia. Not some fantasy where everyone gets a trophy for participation. My father set down his spoon with unexpected force. Eleanor, enough. For 35 years, I've watched you pit our daughters against each other, praising Amanda to punish Patty, using comparison as a weapon. That's absurd, my mother protested. I simply recognized Amanda's achievements and ignored Patty's. Unless they fit your narrow definition of success, Dad continued. Do you know why I never stopped you? Because I was a coward. Because I did the same thing with my brother when we were young. Because it was the pattern I knew. The table fell silent. My father had never spoken so candidly about family dynamics before. Daddy, that's not fair. Amanda began, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? He turned to her. Be honest, Amanda. Has living up to your mother's expectations made you happy? Because, from where I sit, your perfect life seems to be crushing you. Amanda's composure cracked slightly. For the first time that evening, I saw beyond her polished exterior to the exhaustion beneath. The slight tremor in her hand as she reached for her water glass. The barely concealed dark circles under her expertly applied makeup. You don't know what you're talking about, she whispered. Don't I? My father's voice softened. 3 prescriptions for anxiety medication in the past year. Weekly therapy sessions you hide by scheduling them as client meetings. The fact that you haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years because you're terrified of being seen as less committed than your male colleagues. Amanda stared at him, shock evident on her face. How did you? I'm still on the company health insurance board, honey. And contrary to what your mother thinks, I pay attention to my family. I looked at my sister with new eyes, suddenly seeing past the rivalry our mother had cultivated. The perfect Amanda, who had everything I supposedly lacked: social acceptance, our mother's approval, financial stability, was silently drowning. This is ridiculous, my mother declared, standing abruptly. Robert, you're making a scene. We should continue this conversation at home. Why, Eleanor, my father's calm was unsettling. So, you can control the narrative like you always do. Rewrite history. So, you're never wrong. Tell me, have you shared your own story with our daughters? About how your parents treated you when you wanted to start that interior design business? My mother's face drained of color. That's completely irrelevant. Is it you crushed Patty's dreams because your parents crushed yours? You forced Amanda into a mold that's breaking her because you were broken first. The pattern continues until someone has the courage to break it. I stared at my mother. This woman I'd spent my life trying to please. Seeing her clearly, perhaps for the first time. You wanted to be a designer. It was a childish fantasy she dismissed, but her voice wavered. My parents helped me see that. They didn't help you, my father said gently. They controlled you just like you've tried to control our daughters. The room felt suddenly too small, too full of exposed truths and hidden pain. Family secrets spilled across the fine linen tablecloth, alongside crystal glasses and silver cutlery impossible to contain any longer. Perhaps my cousin Jenna suggested we should focus on celebrating Uncle Robert tonight and leave these discussions for another time. Always the peacemaker, Jenna, I remarked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Tell me, was that your role? When you reported my every move back to Amanda and Mom, when you shared the confidential details about my company I trusted you with. Her face confirmed my suspicion before she could form a denial. That's not fair, she began weakly. They were worried about you. They were gathering ammunition, I corrected. And you provided it in exchange for what? Those designer bags you could never afford on a teacher's salary. The vacations to Amanda's Nantucket house. It wasn't like that Jenna protested, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Enough, my mother declared. This entire evening has become inappropriate. Robert, we're leaving. As she reached for her purse, my father remained seated. I'm staying, Eleanor. For once in my life, I'm choosing honesty over harmony. The patterns that had defined our family for generations were finally exposed to the light, revealing the tangled web of expectations, resentments, and unfulfilled dreams that had shaped us all. The evening fractured after my father's declaration. Some family members excused themselves awkwardly. Others lingered, fascinated by the unfolding drama. My mother sat rigidly in her chair, maintaining composure through sheer force of will, while my father quietly sipped his coffee, seemingly at peace with his decision to finally speak his truth. Amanda remained unnaturally, still staring at the tablecloth, as if it contained hidden messages. Her husband had not returned from his sudden departure. Nearly 30 minutes earlier. I should check on Jackson, she finally said, her voice hollow. He left the hotel 17 minutes ago, I replied. One of my security staff saw him get into a taxi. She looked up sharply. What? Without telling me, I nodded, genuinely sorry to be the bearer of bad news. He seemed upset, making several phone calls in the lobby before leaving. A strange calm settled over Amanda's features. Not peace, but the stillness that comes when a person reaches their breaking point. He's probably calling her, she said flatly. Who I asked, though I suspected the answer. His assistant. Or his trainer. Or both. I don't even know anymore. A single tear escaped, quickly wiped away. The great Jackson Porter financial genius can't seem to keep his genius in his pants. Our mother gasped. Amanda, that's not appropriate dinner conversation. Neither is the fact that your perfect son-in-law has been embezzling from the family company to cover his gambling debts. Amanda replied with eerie calmness. But here we are. The table fell completely silent. Even the waitstaff froze momentarily before discreetly withdrawing. That's a serious accusation, my father said carefully. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. Amanda finally looked up, meeting first my eyes, then our father's. I've been covering for him for 8 months. Moving funds between accounts. Falsifying reports. The Westridge acquisition was supposed to hide the shortfall in our liquidity. How much, Dad asked, his voice steady despite the bomb that had just detonated in our family. 22 million. My mother made a small, strangled sound. Does the board know, I asked? Amanda laughed, the sound brittle and painful. Of course not. Mother made sure I was the only one with full access to the consolidated accounts after you left. Keep it in the family, she always said. Well, Jackson is family, isn't he? The son she never had. My father reached for Amanda's hand across the table. Why didn't you come to me and admit failure? She pulled her hand back sharply. In this family, you know what happens to failures, Dad. They get erased. Like all those family photos where Patty mysteriously disappeared after she left Lawrence Investments. I felt a cold shock run through me. What photos? Amanda opened her clutch and removed her phone. After a few swipes, she pushed it toward me. There on the screen was our family portrait from 2 Christmases before I left the company. Except, I wasn't in it. The image had been expertly edited to remove all traces of my existence. Mother had all the family photos in the house altered. Amanda explained tonelessly. When I asked why, she said it was less painful than being reminded of your betrayal. I looked at my mother, this elegant woman who had shaped so much of my self-doubt, and felt nothing but pity. You really did try to erase me. You erased yourself when you rejected everything we stand for, she replied, but the words lacked conviction. I rejected a path that wasn't mine to walk. I corrected gently. That's not the same as rejecting my family. You made that choice. My father's complexion had grown alarmingly pale during this exchange. He loosened his tie, his breathing becoming labored. Dad, alarm shot through me as I recognized the signs. Are you okay? Just need my medication. He patted his pockets weakly. Robert, for heaven's sake, take your pills. My mother's voice carried more annoyance than concern. Always forgetting them. I didn't forget, he said, between shallow breaths. Prescription. Changed last week. New dosage. I was already signaling for Thomas, who appeared instantly at my side. Dad needs medical attention. Call his cardiologist, Dr. Winters. Numbers in my emergency contacts. Then have the hotel doctor meet us in my office immediately. As Thomas moved with calm efficiency, I turned back to my father. Can you walk with support? Or should we bring a wheelchair? I can walk, he insisted, though his complexion suggested otherwise. Just need a minute. Your office. My mother's incredulity cut through her alarm. This is hardly the time for. My office has a private elevator to the medical suite I had installed on the 2nd floor. I explained curtly. Standard feature in all my properties since Dad's first heart incident 3 years ago. As Thomas and I helped my father to his feet, my mother's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. 3 years ago, Robert was in Zurich on business. 3 years ago. Food poisoning. It was a minor heart attack, I corrected, supporting my father's weight against my shoulder. He didn't tell you because he didn't want to worry you. The same reason he's been hiding his medical reports for the past year. What reports? For the first time that evening, genuine fear replaced my mother's practiced composure. Before I could answer, Gregory appeared with the hotel's medical team. As they took over, helping my father onto a wheelchair despite his weak protests, Amanda gripped my arm. How bad is it? She whispered. Really? Worse than he's admitted to any of us, I replied honestly. But I've arranged for the best cardiac team in Boston to consult on his case. The family gathering dissolved into worried clusters as we followed the medical team to the elevator. My father insisted Amanda and I each hold one of his hands, while my mother trailed behind, suddenly uncertain of her place in this new family configuration, where I held both financial power and medical information. In the medical suite, equipped with hospital-grade monitoring equipment and emergency supplies, Dr. Winters was already waiting via secure video connection. As the hotel doctor examined my father, Dr. Winters addressed us all with professional directness. Mr. Lawrence's condition has deteriorated more rapidly than our models predicted, he explained. The medication adjustment last week was in response to concerning test results. I've been recommending a more aggressive treatment protocol for months. Months. My mother's voice rose. I've attended every appointment. You never said. You attended the scheduled checkups, Mrs. Lawrence, Dr. Winters corrected. These were additional consultations, Mr. Lawrence arranged privately, often with Patty's assistance, since she could work remotely during his treatments. My mother turned to me, decades of practiced superiority, crumbling under the weight of this revelation. You knew. All this time. Dad swore me to secrecy, I said simply. He didn't want you to worry. He didn't want me to know, she corrected, her voice hollow. There's a difference. As the medical team stabilized my father with medication and oxygen, Amanda pulled me aside. The family business is in trouble, isn't it? She asked bluntly. Even without Jackson's activities, I nodded. The quarterly reports tell the story if you know how to read between the lines. Too much overhead, outdated investment strategies, failure to adapt to technological shifts. Mother's been selling off assets, Amanda confessed. Grandmother's jewelry, the vacation property in Vermont, even some of the artwork Dad inherited, all to maintain appearances. The irony was almost too perfect. While I was supposedly struggling financially, my mother had been liquidating family treasures to project an image of continued prosperity. Including the sapphire necklace Grandma promised would come to me, I asked, already knowing the answer. Amanda wouldn't meet my eyes. Last month, to cover the country club membership renewal. The final piece clicked into place: why my mother had been so shocked by my success. Why she'd clung so desperately to the narrative of my failure. It wasn't just about control or family dynamics. My success threatened the carefully constructed facade hiding their financial decline. As we stood in the sterile brightness of the medical suite watching professionals attend to my father, the true cost of our family's dysfunction became heartbreakingly clear. Years of secrets, manipulations, and artificial divisions had nearly cost us the one person who, however imperfectly, had tried to love us both. He asked me last week, Amanda said, quietly, watching our father, if I was happy. Not successful or accomplished. Happy. I couldn't answer him, and now I asked. Now she laughed softly, the sound raw with pain and relief. Now I'm terrified, and strangely free. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of medical consultations, family confrontations, and difficult revelations. My father stabilized but remained in the hotel's medical suite under constant monitoring, while arrangements were made to transfer him to Massachusetts General Hospital for more comprehensive care. Amanda and I established an uneasy truce, united by concern for our father and the shocking realization of how thoroughly we'd been manipulated into competition. We set up a rotating schedule, ensuring one of us was always with him, while the other handled the cascade of family and business crises that continued to unfold. Jackson returned briefly to collect his things from their Boston apartment, before disappearing again. Security footage showed him attempting to access the executive offices on the hotel's top floor before being politely but firmly escorted out by Thomas. A subsequent review of the hotel's network showed multiple attempted breaches, amateur efforts to access financial records that my security team easily contained. On the evening of the second day, I found myself alone in the medical suite with my mother while Amanda met with the family company's legal team. The nurses say his numbers are improving, I offered as a peace gesture. She nodded stiffly, her gaze fixed on my father's sleeping form. Without her usual perfect makeup and styled hair, she looked older, more vulnerable. I sold your grandmother's sapphire necklace, she said abruptly. The one she wanted you to have. I know. You must think I'm a terrible person. The question surprised me. In all our conflicts, my mother had never once shown concern for my opinion of her character. I think you're someone who did what she thought was necessary to maintain the world she understood, I replied carefully. Even when that world was crumbling around her. You sound like your father. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Always finding the charitable interpretation. Not always, I admitted. I've been angry with you for a very long time. But not anymore, she finally turned to look at me. I'm working on it. I met her gaze steadily. Dad told me about your parents. How they reacted when you wanted to start your design business. Her shoulders stiffened. That was a lifetime ago, was it? Or has it shaped every decision you've made since then? Every interaction with your daughters? I wanted to spare you both disappointment, she insisted. The world isn't kind to dreamers, Patricia. No, it isn't, I agreed. But neither were you. The harsh truth hung between us, neither defended nor denied. After a moment, my mother reached into her purse. and removed a folded piece of paper yellowed with age. "The New York School of Design," she said, handing it to me. "I was accepted with a partial scholarship. 50 years ago next month." I carefully unfolded the acceptance letter, scanning the enthusiastic praise for my mother's portfolio. "You were talented, perhaps." She shrugged with practiced indifference, but her fingers trembled slightly. "My father said design was a hobby, not a career. My mother said no man would marry a woman who prioritized work over family. They were right about the second part at least. Dad would have supported your dreams," I said softly. "He supported mine. Robert is unusual that way." Her gaze returned to my father. I didn't understand it. "Still don't really." "Why risk stability for uncertainty?" "Because some dreams don't die quietly," I answered. "They just go underground and reshape everything from within." Something shifted in my mother's expression, a momentary crack in the perfect facade, revealing the wounded, thwarted young woman still living inside her. Before she could respond, the door opened, and Amanda entered, her expression grim. "The board called an emergency meeting," she announced without preamble. "Someone leaked information about discrepancies in the accounts. They're voting tomorrow on whether to remove the entire family from leadership positions." My mother paled. "That's not possible. The Lawrence name is the company. The Lawrence name is now associated with potential financial impropriety." Amanda replied flatly. "Thanks to Jackson. He wouldn't dare expose himself that way," my mother protested. "He didn't have to. The board hired an independent auditor last quarter, standard compliance procedure I implemented." Amanda's laugh held no humor. "My own policy is what caught us." "Ironic, right?" "There must be something we can do," my mother insisted. "Call in favors. Speak to the major shareholders." "The major shareholders are the ones pushing for the audit," Amanda replied. "This isn't something we can social connection our way out of, Mother." As they argued strategy, my father stirred, opening his eyes to the scene of his wife and older daughter locked in conflict, while I stood apart watching. "Still at it, I see," he said weakly. "Robert." My mother was instantly at his side. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," he admitted. "But clearer. Both literally and figuratively." His gaze found mine. "Did you tell them?" I shook my head. "Waiting for you, Dad. Tell us what Amanda demanded." My father adjusted his position slightly, wincing with the effort. "I've been planning to retire for months. Before this latest episode, the company has been struggling for years. Too slow to adapt, too resistant to change. We can turn it around," my mother insisted. "Once this audit business is resolved." "Eleanor." My father's voice, though weak, carried finality. "It's over. The world has changed, and Lawrence Investments didn't change with it. That's the reality. So we just give up. Let strangers take over a business that's been in your family for 4 generations." Her voice rose with indignation. "No," he replied calmly. "We let our daughter take over." 3 pairs of eyes turned to Amanda, who stepped back as if physically struck. "Not me," she said quickly. "I can't. After what happened with Jackson, the board would never—" "Not you, honey." My father's gaze shifted to me. "Patty." The silence that followed was absolute. Then my mother laughed, the sound brittle with disbelief. "Patricia. She left the company 5 years ago. She knows nothing about investment banking. She knows about building something from nothing," my father countered. "About adapting to changing markets. About technological integration, the very thing our company has failed to embrace." "I have my own company to run," I said quietly. "You have an excellent executive team that's been handling daily operations for months while you focus on expansion," my father replied. "Don't think I haven't been paying attention, Patty." "This is absurd," my mother declared. "The board would never accept an outsider. They already have," my father revealed. "Conditionally, I've been in discussions with them for weeks. They're prepared to consider a restructuring under Patty's leadership, with Amanda remaining as CFO if she agrees to full cooperation with the audit." Amanda stared at him in shock. "You knew about Jackson?" "I suspected," he admitted. "But I hoped I was wrong." As the implications sank in, I struggled to process this unexpected development. The company I'd left to pursue my own path was now being offered back to me, not as the golden handcuffs it once represented, but as a family legacy I might reimagine on my own terms. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted, or if I want to. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, my father said gently. Just for you to consider it. The Lawrence name still means something in this city. But maybe it's time it meant something different. The weight of the decision pressed on me. Could I help the family that had rejected me? Should I? As I looked at my father's hopeful expression, my sister's confused vulnerability, and my mother's crumbling pride, I realized the choice wasn't about business at all. It was about breaking cycles of pain that had shaped generations of our family. Later that night, as I walked the quiet halls of my hotel, I found Amanda alone in the Wellington room where our father's birthday celebration had derailed so dramatically 2 days earlier. Couldn't sleep either, I asked, joining her at the window overlooking the harbor. Every time I close my eyes, I see spreadsheets with red numbers, she admitted. And Jackson's face when he told me I was never adventurous enough for him. I winced. I'm sorry. Are you? She turned to face me. You won, Patty. Everything I had is falling apart. And you're standing here with your billions. And your perfect life. My life isn't perfect, I corrected. And this isn't a competition, isn't it? It's all I've ever known it to be. The raw honesty in her voice caught me off guard. Every accomplishment measured against yours. And a Kayers. And a cable. Every accomplishment measured against yours. Every success shadowed by whether it would finally make me enough. Enough for whom, I asked gently. Mom, Dad, yourself. All of the above. She laughed humorlessly. God, I was so jealous when you left. Not because I thought you'd succeed, but because you had the courage to walk away from the path laid out for you. I never did. It's not too late, I offered. Isn't it? Her voice caught. I'm 38 with a failed marriage, possibly facing criminal charges for financial misconduct, and no identity outside the family company that's collapsing around me. You're also brilliant, resilient, and finally free to discover who Amanda is beneath all the expectations. She studied me for a long moment. When did you get so wise? Around the time I stopped defining myself by this family's approval, I answered honestly. It's terrifying at first, then liberating. Will you do it? Take over the company like Dad wants? I considered the question carefully. I don't know yet. But if I do, it won't be the same company. And I won't do it without you. You'd trust me. After everything, I'd trust the sister who's finally being honest with me and herself. I held her gaze. We were never enemies, Amanda. That was a role assigned to us. As we stood together in the quiet elegance of the room, I felt the first genuine connection with my sister since childhood, tentative, fragile, but real. Whatever you decide, she said finally, I'll respect it. That's new for me, but I'm trying. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. And in that moment, I glimpsed the possibility of a relationship rebuilt on truth, rather than competition. The decision before me remained complex, but for the first time it felt like any choice would lead toward healing rather than further division. 1 year later, I stood in the newly renovated lobby of Lawrence Secure Adapt headquarters, watching as employees streamed through the doors for the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. The building retained its historic granite facade, a Boston landmark for generations, but inside everything had changed. Gone were the dark wood paneling and imposing portraits of stern-faced Lawrence patriarchs. In their place, open collaborative spaces flooded with natural light, state-of-the-art technology, seamlessly integrated with comfortable workstations. The renovation reflected the company's transformation, honoring its heritage while embracing innovation. Nervous. My father appeared beside me, looking healthier than he had in years. The comprehensive cardiac care program he'd finally agreed to had worked wonders, as had retiring from day-to-day operations to serve as chairman emeritus. A little, I admitted. Big day. Enormous day, he corrected, squeezing my hand. But you've handled bigger challenges. The past year had been a whirlwind of difficult decisions and unexpected healing. After weeks of deliberation, I had agreed to lead the Lawrence family business, but only on my terms. The company underwent complete restructuring, merging with a division of SecureAdapt to create a financial technology enterprise focused on cybersecurity for banking systems. Amanda remained as CFO, working alongside me rather than beneath me. After fully cooperating with the audit, she avoided criminal charges, though Jackson wasn't so fortunate. Their divorce finalized just as he began serving a 3-year sentence for financial fraud. "Where's your sister, Dad?" asked, checking his watch. "The press will be here soon, finalizing her presentation. You know how thorough she is with numbers." My father smiled. "You two working together, there were times I never thought I'd see it." "Neither did we," I acknowledged. "But it turns out we make a good team when we're not being pitted against each other." The transformation in our sibling relationship had been the most surprising development of all. Without our mother's manipulations, and with a common goal of saving the family legacy, we discovered complementary strengths. Amanda's meticulous attention to detail balanced my big-picture innovation. Her institutional knowledge filled gaps in my understanding of the company's history. My technological expertise helped modernize operations she knew needed updating but didn't know how to approach. Speaking of surprises, my father nodded toward the entrance. "Your mother's here." Eleanor Lawrence entered with her characteristic perfect posture, though everything else about her appearance had changed. Gone were the formal designer suits and rigid hairstyle. Instead, she wore an elegantly simple dress that she'd designed herself. Her silver hair cut in a stylish bob that softened her features. The therapy she'd reluctantly agreed to after my father's health crisis had unearthed decades of suppressed dreams and resentments. To everyone's shock, no one's more than her own, she had enrolled in a design certification program at 65 years old. "Patricia?" She greeted me with a brief embrace. Still awkward, but genuine. "The renovations look wonderful." That use of natural light in the reception area was inspired. "Thanks, Mom. I value your professional opinion." I meant it sincerely. Her small design firm, launched 6 months earlier, with seed funding I'd provided as a birthday gift, had already gained attention for its work with senior living communities. It turned out my mother's eye for elegant yet practical spaces was particularly suited to creating environments that honored the dignity of aging without sacrificing beauty. "Is everything prepared for the announcement?" she asked, her old habit of checking details asserting itself. "All set," I assured her. The Lawrence Family Foundation launches officially after the ribbon cutting. This had been my non-negotiable condition for taking over the company, establishing a foundation that would provide scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding for young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, particularly young women whose families didn't support their dreams. "I still think the name is too wordy," my mother noted. "The Eleanor Lawrence Second Chance Design Scholarship is quite a mouthful." "But accurate," I replied with a smile. "And meaningful." She nodded, a flash of emotion crossing her face before her composure returned. "I should find my seat. The photographer will want family photos soon." As she moved away, Amanda appeared at my side, tablet in hand. "Final numbers for the quarter," she reported. 22% growth, exceeding projections by 7 points. "Not bad for a company that was nearly bankrupt a year ago," I observed. "Not bad for sisters who barely spoke for 5 years," she countered with a small smile. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. Speeches kept mercifully brief, the obligatory giant scissors cutting the ceremonial ribbon, applause from employees and press alike. I found myself scanning the crowd, taking in the faces of people whose livelihoods depended on the decisions I now made. The responsibility felt weighty but right. Afterward, as attendees mingled during the reception, I slipped away to the building's rooftop garden, another addition I'd insisted on during renovations. The space offered stunning views of Boston Harbor, and more importantly, a moment of quiet reflection, hiding from your own party. A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find Thomas still heading my security team, but now also serving as chief security officer for the merged companies. "Strategic retreat," I corrected. "Just needed a moment." He nodded, understanding. Your father's looking for you. Said something about a family photo. Thanks. I'll head down in a minute. As Thomas turned to leave, I called after him. Do you think it was worth it? All of this? He considered the question seriously. A year ago, you were standing outside your hotel being told you didn't belong by your own family. Today, you've transformed a failing company, launched a foundation that will change lives, and somehow managed to heal a family that seemed beyond repair. He shrugged. I'd say that's worth quite a lot. His perspective struck me. From the outside, the transformation seemed remarkable. From within, living each difficult day of confrontation and reconciliation, it had often felt impossible. When I rejoined my family for photos, I was struck by how different we all appeared from that fateful night at my father's birthday dinner. My father healthier and more relaxed. My mother finding her voice and passion late in life. Amanda slowly building an identity separate from the role she'd been assigned. And me no longer the outsider seeking approval, but a woman comfortable with her own power and the responsibility it carried. One final announcement, I said, after the photographs were complete, guiding my family to a quiet corner. I've purchased back Grandma's sapphire necklace from the collector who bought it. My mother's hand flew to her throat. Patricia, you didn't have to. I wanted to. I interrupted gently. Not to hold the past over anyone's head, but because it represents something important. I removed a blue velvet box from my jacket pocket. It belongs in our family. I opened the box to reveal the sapphire pendant nestled against white satin, a deep blue stone, surrounded by delicate diamonds hanging from a platinum chain. It's more beautiful than I remembered, Amanda murmured. Grandma would be pleased it's home, my father added. I lifted the necklace and held it out, not to keep for myself, but offering it to my mother. I think you should wear it today. Her eyes widened in genuine surprise. But she wanted you to have it. And now I'm choosing what happens to it, I explained. That's the difference between ownership and possession. I'm not defined by the things I own, but by what I choose to do with them. As I fastened the clasp around my mother's neck, I saw tears in her eyes. Perhaps the first genuine tears I'd witnessed from her in adulthood. I was wrong about so many things, she admitted quietly, touching the pendant. About what success means. About what family should be. We all were, I replied. But that's the thing about being wrong. You can learn from it if you're brave enough. Later that evening, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, watching the city lights shimmer against the darkening sky. The day's events played through my mind like scenes from someone else's life. In many ways, it was someone else's life, the version of Patricia Lawrence I had never imagined becoming. My phone chimed with a message from the director of the foundation. The first round of scholarship applications had arrived, 374 young women with dreams too big for their circumstances but perfect for their potential. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, I'd stood alone against my family's disapproval, fighting to pursue a vision only I could see. Today, I had the power to ensure other young women wouldn't have to choose between their dreams and their family's support. Family blindness had indeed cost dearly, measured in years of estrangement, missed connections, and unnecessary pain. But the clarity that came from confronting that blindness had proven even more valuable. Success wasn't the luxury hotel I owned or the billions in my accounts. It wasn't even saving the family business or establishing the foundation. True success was creating a life aligned with my values, surrounding myself with relationships based on authenticity rather than expectation, and using my power to help others find their own path. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? What would you have done in my place? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing to hear more. Journeys of triumph over family challenges. Like this video, if you believe in following your own path, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to pursue their dreams, despite opposition. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family we build is as important as the family we're born into.